Welcome back to our South Carolina Town Hall with Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley. Now to more questions from our audience today. Let's go to Jackson. He is a broadcast journalism major at the University of South Carolina. And Jackson, you say that you have not made up your mind yet about who you're going to vote for, and I assume that your vote will turn on whatever the governor says in response to your question.
Well, we'll see. Maybe I'll be up there with you someday, John.
All right.
Hi, Jackson. How are you?
Good to see you, Governor. As a college student, I'm having to go to the grocery store on my own now and do more adult things. I'm noticing that when I leave the grocery store with 2 bags, I've spent $100 or more. How are we going to get back on track and bring those costs back down?
You know, and I worry a lot about your generation. I mean, my kids both, they're in their 20s. And what worries me is if you look at the challenges that they go through, look at the years that they've had, whether it was COVID, but now they're worried about all this debt that has been piled on, and they wonder how they're going to be responsible for it. They worry about how they're going to be able to buy a home. The average home buyer in America now is 49 years old. The American dream is leaving them. They're worried about whether they're going to be able to get a job. And so these are real issues. They're worried about that they have a fear of war. All of these things, I know what you're feeling. And so what I'll tell you, when it comes to the economy, you first have to look at how you got there to know how you're going to fix it. Here under Donald Trump, he put us $8 trillion in debt in just 4 years. He claims it was COVID. Less than 25% of that was COVID. The first thing we have to understand is Republicans and Democrats put us into this mess. And we've got to call them both out for getting us out of this mess. Whether it was the spending, whether it's the borrowing, whether it's all of the things that they've done, we are $34 trillion in debt. We're having to borrow money just to make our interest payments. China owns some of that debt. For the first time, we're paying more in interest payments than we are in our defense budget. You know who pays attention to that? Russia, China, and Iran. So we've got to start pulling out of that. The way we do that is we start with our economy. We claw back the $100 billion of unspent COVID dollars that are still sitting out there. Instead of 87,000 IRS agents going after middle America, go after the hundreds of billions of dollars of COVID fraud. 1 out of every $7 was spent fraudulently. If 8% of our budget is interest, quit borrowing. Cut up the credit cards. You have to balance a budget every day. I had to balance a budget as governor. Why is Congress the only group that refuses to balance a budget? We'll stop the spending, we'll stop the borrowing, we'll eliminate their pet projects, and I'll veto any spending bill that doesn't take us back to pre-COVID levels. That will save us trillions. The next thing we'll do is we'll take as many federal programs as we can and send them down to the state level. That will dramatically reduce the size of the federal government, but it will empower people on the ground. Think education, think healthcare, think welfare, think mental health. If we cut the strings and send that down, and every state can customize it. Then we need to open up the middle class. We'll cut taxes on the middle class. We'll simplify those brackets. We'll make sure that we eliminate the federal gas and diesel tax in this country. And we'll make small business tax cuts permanent. Small businesses are the heartbeat of our economy. We need to start acting like it. And then the main thing we can do to bring down costs is let's expand our energy sector. We need to take our energy sector and turn it into an economic powerhouse. Right now, the EPA spends more time focusing on sagebrush lizards than they do about whether we can afford our utility bill. We need to speed up permitting, open up the pipelines, including Keystone Pipeline, export as much liquefied natural gas as we can, do nuclear power, all of those things. When we do that, we will bring down inflation. We will also pay down our debt. And that's when you'll start to feel a little lighter and the groceries will feel a bit cheaper.
Governor, we should note that the projected federal deficit for fiscal year 24 is $1.5 trillion, which is just shy of the total discretionary budget of $1.7 trillion. A lot of people say the only way that you could ever balance the budget would be to reform things like Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, which brings us to our next question. We've got Leah up. She works in digital marketing. Leah, what's your question?
Hi, Leah. How are you?
Good evening. There is a Trump advert running that I believe is false and exaggerated, and I would like you to set the record straight on the age group that would be impacted by your Social Security plan. What are your plans for Social Security?
Thank you for that question. And it's once again, Trump is lying about my record. And I will say this, if you have to lie to win, you don't deserve to win, period. On top of doing all these things that we talked about with the economy, we also have to acknowledge some hard truths. Social Security will go bankrupt in 10 years. Medicare will go bankrupt in 8. Putting our head in the sand is not going to fix that problem. Donald Trump has said he's not going to touch it. Joe Biden said he's not going to touch it. You know what that does? When they leave office, that's a 24% cut for everybody in their benefits. That is unacceptable. The accountant in me says you get in front of an issue. So the first thing we need to do is tell everybody, if you are invested in the system, if you are looking to get something, we're not touching you. America should keep her promises, and we're going to keep that promise to you. But the way we deal with those is we go to those like my kids in their 20s, and we tell them that coming into the system, we're going to have to change the rules for them. We'll have to change the retirement age to reflect life expectancy for them. Well, instead of cost of living increases, we'll do increases based on inflation. We'll cap the benefits on the mega wealthy. And we'll expand Medicare Advantage plans, which seniors love, that create more competition. Once we do that, not only can we make sure that you have what you're expecting, but we can also make sure our kids have something so that when their time comes, they've got something there for them. That's the way that we'll take it on. You have to address it. You can't ignore it just for a vote. You've got to just speak hard truths to people, but let them know that we've got a solution as we go forward in that process.
So let me press you just a little bit, if I could, on part of Leah's question, and that is, at what age would Social Security start? You have said 65 is way too low in terms of your future plans.
I didn't say that.
I
said 65 is way too low for those in their 20s.
In terms of your future plans. In 1935, when Social Security was enacted, the average male lived to be 58, the average woman lived to be 62. The retirement age was 65. So predominantly, most Americans were not expected to ever collect Social Security. By that metric, with the current average life expectancy of 77, you shouldn't start Social Security until you're 84. So what would be a good age, a reasonable age in your plan for people to start collecting Social Security?
Well, it would be irresponsible to just throw an age out there. I think what we need to do is...
You know this stuff. Maybe you're not an actuarial, but...
No, but accountants also know you have to look at all the numbers. You have to look at exactly what you're dealing with, what the debt is, what you're focused on raising in the process, and how much that's going to cost. I think we've got to do our homework. We've got to do this right, and you can't throw an age out there. What you can say is for those coming up in their 20s, we do know that 65, when you're looking at life expectancy, it's not the same as what it was when they started this. And so we're going to have to figure that out. But the goal is to make sure they have something too. It's not to leave them high and dry. It's to make sure we hold on to the people that are in the system now, and we fix it going forward. When I was governor in South Carolina, we had a pension reform system that was going bankrupt, like so many different states around the country. And what we did is we didn't touch people that were in the system. We went to the new state employees that were coming in and said, we're going to change the rules for you. This is the same thing. And you've got to figure out what those numbers are. But the bottom line is at least we're going to fix it, as opposed to act like it's not a problem. I think that's the problem that's gotten us here. And we also have to get on to Congress. No more raiding Social Security, because they're the ones that keep doing this. They keep spending money that they shouldn't be spending.
I was going to say, you say you have to fix it. You've got to get Congress on board. They don't want to touch it. Governor, more big issues to tackle like abortion and crime coming up next. Don't go.